Achievers! No one's surprised that I'm here talking about ADHD and autism today, but I am under the assumption that if you're watching this video, you either have ADHD or autism or both. You maybe think you have ADHD or autism or both. You may be considering starting medication, or you're just really interested in seeing what the brain of a strange person is like and how medication affects that. I'm a wonderful case of it being quite complicated and it not being specifically as easy as a lot of maybe influencers with ADHD make out medication and what it feels like to be on it is. I don't know if that did that make sense?
Wait, isn't it just a fun little thing and you're just a little quirky?
Yeah, so realistically, yeah. So like, we know if you're watching this, ADHD, it's not just like a fun little quirky thing that you just take medication for and suddenly your life is transformed. I'm sure for some people that is the case, and even for me, several points in my diagnosis medication journey, that's how I felt about it. I haven't watched the video that I made about getting diagnosed and starting medication in ages, probably since it came out. So I'm under the impression that I was quite positive in the first video I talked about medication. But today, we're gonna be maybe unpacking a bit about what it's actually like to experience getting diagnosed, going on medication, and realizing that maybe the medication you're on is kind of just making your life fall apart a little bit. First things first, I have no intention of like scaring people away from diagnosis or taking medication. Obviously, one person that takes ADHD medication will have a completely different experience than another one, and I'm only really here to talk about myself and maybe like the experience that friends that are similar to me have had on medication. So I feel like the appropriate place to go back to is childhood, because, you know, part of the diagnosis is that the symptoms that you have to do with ADHD are present from childhood. So when I was a kid, I was extremely hyperactive, very excitable, running about the place, probably really annoying for my parents and anybody around me to deal with. But the thing about that is that my brother was 10 times worse. So he was diagnosed with ADHD. He didn't start medication, but he was diagnosed like relatively early, maybe at like 10 or 11. And because I did well in school, because I was decent at like keeping friendships and, you know, socializing with people that were also like me, I feel like my parents and I guess like the school system didn't feel the need to maybe look into any ADHD-like symptoms I was having, because, you know, it's the classic story with people with ADHD or like maybe even with autism where like they don't get diagnosed and people don't suspect that they have anything like neurodevelopmental going on because they're able to deal with life, or at least from the outside to other people it seems like they're doing well. Like, sure, they may not be very organized, but they're still doing really well at school. So that was kind of my situation where like I was lucky enough, if I paid attention in class, I would retain that information. I couldn't revise, ever. That was a big part of the diagnosis where I was like, I just can't sit down and study. But I managed to get through school and I guess life kind of under the radar. Number one, because my brother was so much worse than me. And number two, I'm trans. And a lot of the time, there is a severe lack of diagnoses in like ADHD, autism, that kind of thing for people that were raised as girls. A lot of the time, girls will go in to get a diagnosis. A lot of the time, girls will go to get a diagnosis of ADHD. Cis? A lot of the time, they'll be diagnosed with like anxiety or depression. They won't be diagnosed with ADHD or autism because a lot of the research into both of those things is heavily based on men and the way that they express their symptoms in life. So yeah, I went under the radar mostly. I mean, like, my friends always assumed I had ADHD. My psychology teacher that knew a lot about ADHD was very certain that I had ADHD, and my teacher did not know for certain that I had ADHD, but she gave me all of the things that she would give to other ADHD students, where like I was allowed to get up out of my seat and walk around the classroom. I would always get work done really quick, so I'd always be asking for more, so she like had that in mind when I was in her class. I'm 26 now, but even 10 years ago, the understanding that people have of ADHD and autism, vastly different. My childhood kinda, you know, dealt with stuff, was useless at organization, could never really pay attention unless I really like hyper-focused on stuff. I had pretty much every single symptom ever. And it got to a point where, I feel like this is a very familiar experience for like adults that haven't been diagnosed with ADHD. It got to a point where I was an adult and I was like, I feel like adulthood should not be this hard. I feel like dealing with day-to-day stuff, like managing to like get out of bed, cook myself breakfast, lunch, dinner, meet up with friends, not be late on, what are they called? Deadlines. I struggled a lot with that kind of thing, and as soon as I finished school and I had to like discipline myself, I was like, and I would spend so long just like feeling bad about myself, sad that I was like unable to do anything, because that is how having ADHD feels like. It feels like there's something wrong with you and you're just unable to do what you really want to do. I had started looking up ADHD And specifically my boyfriend Corey was like, I'm not gonna say it, but you got ADHD and maybe your life would be a little bit easier if you were for sure certain that you had it, because then it would be a little less confusing. So obviously, I went to go get diagnosed with ADHD in 2021. Pretty much the entire experience was just like me listing every single thing that is on the DSM-5 of having ADHD and her ticking a box, being like, yeah, you got ADHD, cool. Do you want to start medication? Wasn't really told how the medications really work. It was like an hour-long diagnosis, and when I finished it, I was given a prescription for Ritalin.
Nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen.
Essentially, it's called methylphenidate, which works by like increasing dopamine in your brain, which is supposed to make you focus, help you with concentration. I was happy about it. I was relieved. I was like, cool, I've got this sorted out. This video isn't specifically about me getting the autism diagnosis, but what I will say, getting the ADHD very much proved to me that it wasn't the full picture. So what happens, at least in the UK, is when you're diagnosed with ADHD and you're gonna go on medication, you get sent the prescription and you go through something called titration, which is where you pretty much build up the dosage of the medication that you're gonna take and see which dosage works for you. At this point in my life, I was tiny. I was teeny tiny. So I started on a very low dose of ADHD medication, methylphenidate, which is the same dose that they give to children. And when I tell you, the first day that I took that my mind was blown. It felt like beforehand, my brain was just full of like a million different voices like competing with each other, and there wasn't like one strong through line that I could focus on. It just felt like my entire life was chaos, which it is, which it was, and my brain was too. I took this one pill and all of a sudden I could focus in on one thought, which for someone that has never really been able to do that much my entire life, it was insane. The first day taking ADHD medication, I did the dishes, which is something I always struggled with, was never able to do it. I did the dishes, and after every single dish, because the medication increases your dopamine, you're getting that reward that your brain is telling you you've done something good. Every single time I finished a dish and put it on the rack, it felt like I was getting what do men do? It felt like my brain was dapping me up, essentially. I'm like, holy my life is gonna be entirely different from now on. And it was. Something that a lot of people with ADHD struggle with, obviously, is routine. I've never been able to keep a routine. I grew up in a naval boarding school, which meant that my routine was dictated to me from 7 a.m. until like 9:30 p.m. every single night. Obviously, you lose that routine, you don't know how to give it to yourself, but my hopes were I'd be taking this pill, I'd manage to get the routine down, I'd figure it out, and I'd feel more like a person, which is kind of what happened. Like, I'd wake up in the morning, didn't want to get out of bed. Even if I did want to get out of bed, I'd find it really hard because executive dysfunction, which is essentially like thinking about something and being able to do it, just completely gone with people with ADHD. I started taking this pill. I would wake up in the morning, be really excited, which, bear in mind, methylphenidate, a stimulant. And I'm not here being like, if you take stimulant medication, you're like on cocaine the whole time. But what I will say is that I had taken non-prescription drugs before stimulants in a safe environment after they had been tested. Just to let you know, I had taken those before I had taken any ADHD medication. And something that I quite quickly realized was when I took this pill, for the first hour, it felt like I was having a come up. I would get really excited. My heart would beat really fast, which of course is a stimulant. Your heart is gonna beat really fast. There was like a slight euphoric feeling, which like, of course, anybody feels euphoric. You feel pretty good. During the titration, you know, you're on one dose of the medication for 1 week. The next week you go up to 2 doses. The next week you go up to 3. So the thing that kind of made me realize that I should maybe go for an autism diagnosis as well was the extent of my sensory issues. If you don't know what that is, name the 5 senses. We have the seeing, we have the hearing, we have the smelling, we have the feeling. What are the 5 senses?
Taste.
Smell, taste!
Oh, I leave quite an impression.
People with sensory issues will either have like really dull reactions to like sensory input, where like they'll hear a really loud noise and it won't affect them. Or they could go the complete other end where they're really sensitive to everything. Sounds are way too loud even if you're in a quiet room. Like for example, a big thing with like autism that a lot of people talk about is the fact that like you can hear electricity and it can become very overstimulating. And I've been overstimulated my entire life. But on the second week of titration where I was taking 2 pills instead of just 1, I realized that the sensory information that I was receiving was like very overwhelming. But at this point, it was quite difficult to figure out like what was going on, because I'm like, on the one hand, I'm taking this pill that makes me feel really good, even just chemically, but it also makes me feel like I'm being rewarded by my own brain for doing things that I was never able to do before. So it felt kind of like a super pill. I know that a lot of people take stimulants if they're in university to do like 24 hours of work in one sitting, and it does work because it's a stimulant. But my thing, even like 2 weeks into titration, I was like, I don't know if I want to feel like I'm on a drug every single day of my life just in order to get stuff done. It was very obvious, at least to me, that that is how I was feeling. So like an example of like a day in the life on like week 2 of titration was like waking up feeling really excited to see what the day holds because I'm gonna take this pill and maybe I'm gonna be able to do that I'd feel bad about not being able to do. I would not be eating enough, which is something that if you're ever gonna go on ADHD medication that are stimulant based, you need to have like loads of protein in the morning, otherwise you'll feel frazzled. Day in the life, wake up, take my pill, manage to get out of bed, have a shower, maybe tidy up a little bit, do the dishes. One big side effect of ADHD medication is that you don't have much of an appetite. I already struggled with food and textures because of the sensory issues, so even like forcing myself to eat something in the morning was difficult. But week 2 of titration, you have absolutely no appetite, you've taken your pill. It was really hard for me to eat food. And that was kind of like reinforcing the anxiety that I was having. And essentially, I felt like the entire day I was on the verge of a panic attack, but because I was getting stuff done, I was like, oh, this is kind of fine. Like, there's always gonna be side effects to medication that you take, and I just need to figure out if it was worth it. This was 4 years ago, by the way, and I'm still on the medication, so I'm a very slow mover. Fast forward to week 3 of titration, I was on 3 pills. I took 1 dose of that and felt like I was gonna die, and I was like, no, cool, we're settled. I'll either take 1 pill on a day where I don't need to get that much stuff done, but I still want to get out of bed and like maybe do the dishes, hoover the living room or something, and 2 pills if I have like a really intensive work day. So that was me, set. And since 2021, that's kind of how I've been working, or not working. If you're unaware of ADHD medication stimulant side effects, I'll list out a few of them. I feel like the most obvious one is like anxiety. You're taking something that increases your heart rate, kind of simulating panic, I guess, depending on how sensitive you are to that kind of thing. High heart rate, anxiety, no appetite whatsoever, to the point where eating anything when I'm on Ritalin feels like a chore. Like chewing is very unenjoyable, and because of the sensory issues I have, I'd be very aware that I was chewing and then I'd gag. It was a whole thing. It's still something I haven't figured out. Another side effect, headaches. You also get really dry mouth, which is why, if you've been noticing in my videos, that I have real frothy it's from the medication. Another side effect is insomnia. Obviously, you're on a stimulant. If you don't take it early enough in the day for it to like wear out by the time you go into bed, you're gonna struggle having sleep. I feel like existential dread, if that's not on the medication box, it should be on the medication box, because that's a big one for me. Oh, and another one for me, especially, frustration. Like, I get way more frustrated, and I'm way more quick to frustration when I'm on Ritalin. So at this point, you're probably like, well, you're listing all these difficult things you have to deal with the medication. Why are you still on it? And to be honest, it's because I haven't figured out another way to get stuff done. You probably realize my upload schedule has never been consistent, and that obviously has to do with like burnout, being tired, maybe not feeling well mentally. But another thing is that like I've realized embarrassingly recently that like on a week where I'm taking medication every single day, I can kind of put up with stuff. Like, yes, I'll be really overwhelmed. Yes, I'll feel like panicky by the end of the day as it's wearing off. I feel like really unpleasant. It just feels like my body feels wrong as it's wearing off. And then if I get to the weekend and I decide, look, we don't need any of this. We don't need to feel the like constant drive to achieve something. The motivation that I was getting was based on anxiety of not achieving something. If I start taking a medication on the weekend, obviously, the entire week, my body has been like used to the amount of dopamine that was being fed into me every single day, that by the time that it reaches the weekend, there's obviously going to be a drop off, because if I'm trying to get out in the morning, but I don't have the pill that makes me get out of bed every morning, I'm not going to get out of bed, which means I'm going to spend the whole day in bed feeling bad about myself. By the time Monday came around, I'd just be getting into this cycle where I'd essentially be waking up, taking this pill that, yes, makes me anxious, but also helps me do stuff. And based on the stuff that I do, music, YouTube, all that, there's a lot of things to be on top of. So I kind of felt like if I wasn't taking this medication, I couldn't do anything. But the fact that I've been taking it 4 years now, it's kind of got to the point where that is the case, where I've like accustomed myself to be like so used to just like taking something that makes me be able to do something. And now if I don't have anything to take, then I don't know if it's like my brain is telling me I can't do something, which, you know, manifests the inability to do it, or literally just because the chemical imbalance of being used to being on a stimulant is just not there anymore. So I feel like something that I should have realized like way earlier on. Okay, so this is 2022. I've been on medication for a year, taking it every single day pretty much. And you know what? Yes, I was feeling anxious. Yes, I had no appetite. Like, yes, my body felt very horrible, and because of the autism, because of the sensitivities. Essentially what I'm trying to say, without it sounding like a crazy clickbait conspiracy anti-drug thing, is that stimulant medication, ADHD medication, made me feel more autistic. And I know there might be people in the comments that are just like, that's not true, that doesn't exist. I have a lot of friends that are also ADHD, autism, that experience this, and I don't think it's like a very complicated thing to imagine. When you're on a stimulant, your body is like preparing for everything. Like it's working on overdrive, and that affects the sensory input that you're receiving. So for example, like, as I said earlier, like a lot of people that have like ADHD or autism that are girls or raised girls will be misdiagnosed with anxiety, because a lot of the time, being autistic will cause a lot of anxiety. You'll be in a social situation, maybe you can't read the tone of the conversation that's happening. That is amplified when the anxiety that you're feeling it feels like the anxiety I'm experiencing is like on steroids. So I'm like second guessing everything. I'm hyper aware of sensory input. If I go to a party, if I go to a loud place, when I'm on Ritalin, I will genuinely just have a terrible time, because the entire time I'm like really tense, which is another thing that happens when you go on stimulants. Who should I talk to? What should I talk to them about? Have I prepared this conversation? Oh, there's somebody over there that I know. Oh, it's really too loud. Oh, it's too loud, and also there's too many noises at once. Again, this is just my personal experience. I know a lot of people that have autism and ADHD experience similar things. But the point is that it's just kind of it left me in a situation, and I'm kind of in the situation still, where my autism and my ADHD are battling each other all the time, which is something that's always been a thing. But when the ADHD medication like supercharges the anxiety, supercharges the sensory, everything is overwhelming. I'm gonna be really transparent now. I had an appointment last week to change my ADHD medication. It is to a different stimulant drug, which I know you're probably listening to this like, why are you trying that again? I've tried the different type of ADHD medication. The one that I'm being prescribed is called Vyvanse. I've had some of my friends, and it feels like a much smoother journey. But essentially the point of this video is like, I just wanted to talk about how I was feeling, and maybe if other people feel the same way, because a lot of what I see on the internet is just like, here's this pill that like completely changed my life. And it does change your life. I'm not going to deny that for a lot of people it helps them out in a lot of places. It helped me out in a lot of places, but it also brought upon things that I never really anticipated. When I got diagnosed with ADHD, I didn't really picture autism being a thing that affected me. I guess the reason that I'm making this video is really, I don't want to say I want to like warn people that have autism and ADHD, or even just ADHD. I mean, like, you may have very similar side effects to me. I don't want to specifically like warn people away from it, but I do want to let people know that this is an experience that like, I'm not alone in. I definitely felt alone in it. But yeah, I mean, like, it wasn't really explained to me how autism and ADHD interact with each other, even outside of medication. I just wanted to let you guys know, because I know a lot of you are autistic. I know a lot of you are getting ADHD diagnoses. And yeah, this is just information that I think is useful to have. In the same way that like I used to make testosterone videos, letting you guys know the experiences that maybe other people haven't talked about. But yeah, I guess that's the end of the video. If you have any specific questions relating to autism, ADHD, medication, that kind of leave them in the comments below. I will try and get to them. If I can't, you guys should do it, because I know you're all probably experiencing the same thing. But yeah, that's the end of the video. Have a good day or don't. See you later, losers. Goodbye.